Hey, what's going on guys? Jason here. In this video I will be talking about React and state. So in my last video I made a simple project talking about components and props and how they work. So I basically made a project where I rendered out a few doc components with their own unique properties here. So I will just be building upon that project. And so what I want to do is I want to basically make a button for each of these doc components, and whenever I click that button, I want a property on this dot component, which will be called BART count, to basically increment. So it'll just be, so I'll just have like BART count here, which will have 0, and every time I press the BART button, it'll just increment that amount every time. So each one of these components will contain its own BART counts, essentially, so their own state. So let's go ahead and go into the project. So right now we have our dog JS component, and since I'm going to make use of state in this component, I will need to change this functional component into a class-based component. So I just need to do class dog extends component, and in order to render out some JSX in the class-based component, I need to make use of the render method that we get when doing a class-based component. So I'll just add my return statement in there. There we go. And now I will need to make use of the constructor method, and we'll add the props there, and we'll add in super because we're inheriting from components, so we're gonna make use of the props, so we'll do that. And inside our constructor method, we will initialize our state. So what I have to do is do this dot state, and our state will be an object, and inside that object I will have a property, and I'll call it BART count, and I'll set that equal to 0. Okay, we're good there. And now since we're using a class-based component, I will need to change this props.name to this.props. Alright, there we go. Okay, and I'll go ahead and add my p tag real quick for the BART count. So we'll do BART count, and in there I will add some curly braces because I will be making use of some JavaScript. So in here I will just add this dot state dot BART count, so we can get the current BART count of this component. And then I'll just add a button, I'll call it BART. Alright, so then I'll just need to create the functionality every time the user clicks the button. So we want to increment our BART count whenever that button is clicked. So I'll need to create a method, and I'll call it increment count. And I will be using a arrow function here because that way we can bind this to our dog component. Because if I didn't use increment, or if I didn't use an arrow function, I'd have to do something like this, do this dot increment count equal to increment count dot bind this, and that doesn't really look the best, and I prefer the arrow function. It looks a lot cleaner, and plus it's easier to use, so we'll be making use of that. Alright, cool. So then we have increment count. And so whenever our user clicks the button, I'm going to invoke this increment count, and what I want to do is update the state. So in order to update the state in React, we don't want to update the state directly. We want to make use of this method called this.setState, and we'll invoke that, and inside here we're going to update the property inside our state, which is BART count. And what I'll do is do this dot state dot BART count, so I'll get the current BART count and then just add 1 to it. So every time this method gets invoked, we're going to update the BART count property on our state, and we'll just take the current state and update it by 1. And then to make use of that method on our button, all I will do is do an on click and then set that equal to this dot increment count. So every time our user clicks a button, this onClick uh, property will invoke the increment count method there. And then, let's see, so I think we're all good there, so I'll go ahead and save that. Battery's gonna die soon. So yeah, let's go ahead and go back into our project. So here are our three dog components with each one having their own button and their own bark count. So if I press this, looks like it's updating, and the other dog components are not because they all have their own state. So if I press that, that'll update, and if I do that, that'll update as well. So there you go, guys. That's a basic example of using React, using state in React. So uh, hopefully you guys found this video helpful. If you did, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. I would greatly appreciate it. And if you'd like to see more content like this, go ahead and subscribe. So thanks for watching, guys. Have a good day.